Hello, I'm Ivan, and we're about to embark on a fascinating journey into three of the most important scriptures in human history: the Bible, the Quran, and the Book of Mormon. All three texts claim to be divinely inspired and have had a profound impact on the beliefs and lives of billions of people. They have shaped civilizations and inspired countless individuals, so it is vital that their claims are carefully examined. When we talk to our Muslim friends, we often encounter a core question: which is the true word of God, the Bible or the Quran? As a Christian, I will immediately and firmly declare that the Bible is the inherent word of God. However, for Muslims or anyone who does not have a specific religious stance, this response is often not credible because it involves a subjective statement of faith that cannot be proven or refuted, and there is no possibility of inquiry or verification. Similarly, when Muslims are asked the same question, they will also answer that the Quran is the final word of God, and the discussion will often end. Both Christianity and Islam derive their belief systems from their respective revelations, the Bible and the Quran, but we find that they disagree in many ways. One only needs to compare how two texts deal with Jesus, sin, atonement, and salvation to see that there are conflicting claims between the two. Therefore, it is necessary to clarify which text best qualifies as the final and perfect word of God. When two documents that both claim to be authentic contradict each other, we must determine whether these contradictions can be adequately explained using standards that are acceptable to non-believers or third parties. In other words, using standards that transcend the believer's personal faith commitment. This series aims to examine this topic with an objective scholarly evaluation. So, we first have to ask a very fundamental question: why do we need to ask about divine revelation? Imagine this: if there really is a God who created the vast universe and us humans, do you think that this God would want to communicate with his creation? This is a very reasonable assumption, just like a loving parent would never give birth to a child and then abandon it without guidance. Communication is natural; it is the desire to connect. And if there is such a divine revelation, it should not be a hidden, mysterious experience accessible only to a few. A God who wants to communicate with all of humanity would ensure that his message is accessible, transcending the limitations of culture, place, and time. From this perspective, written literature, a text that can be passed down through the ages and widely circulated, is the ideal way to benefit more people. Because it can transcend the limitations of place and time, and can be accessed by people from all over the world at different historical periods. More importantly, a text that claims to be divinely inspired should clearly claim its divine origin. This is an important criterion. For example, an ancient wisdom book like the Tao Te Ching contains profound philosophical and moral teachings. However, it does not directly claim to be a spoken or direct message from a deity. The Bible, the Quran, and the Book of Mormon make such claims. This "we are from God" claim is what distinguishes them from other wisdom literature. So how do we examine these claims? In this series, we will use externally verifiable criteria rather than relying solely on personal feelings of faith. Our goal is to conduct an objective scholarly evaluation. We will examine their historicity claims in three main areas: manuscript analysis, examining extant early manuscripts and documents; documentary analysis, exploring historical documents that support or refute their accounts; archaeological analysis, looking at archaeological findings that confirm or deny their historical accounts. We must ask, can the Quran or the Bible withstand verification? Can they withstand external critical analysis of their authenticity? This is a very complex and difficult subject. My goal is to examine the historical data that exists during these periods and determine whether they support or deny the historicity claims of the Bible and the Quran. If the manuscript, documentary, and archaeological evidence supports their claims, then we can assume their reliability. However, if the evidence denies their historicity, then we must question their authenticity. To give you a basic understanding of these three books, let's briefly describe the time and method of their respective claims of origin: the Bible, The Old Testament, whose contents were written between about 1447 BC and 70 AD, the New Testament, most of which is thought to have been written in the mid to late 1st century AD. Many of the books in the New Testament may have been written before AD 80, and there is even evidence that parts of the Gospels may have been written before AD 68, within 35 years of Jesus' death. Some New Testament books may have been written before AD 62. For example, the Book of Acts does not mention the martyrdoms of James, AD 62, Paul, AD 64, and Peter, AD 65, which were significant events in the early Christian community. The Quran, according to tradition, the Quran was revealed between AD 610 and 632, during the lifetime of Muhammad, who received divine revelation and dictated it. These oral revelations were collected and compiled into a book by Muhammad's followers after his death. However, the earliest extant manuscript of the Quran is generally considered to be no earlier than the late 8th century AD, or 790 AD. The Book of Mormon claims to have a more recent origin, around 1823 AD, when Joseph Smith translated the book from gold plates, claiming to have been guided by the angel Moroni. These gold plates claim to record the history of the ancient inhabitants of the Americas and their dealings with divine powers from the time of the ancient Tower of Babel, circa 2000 BC, to 400 AD. The book recounts the story of the descendants of Israel migrating to America and establishing a large civilization. The Book of Mormon is a sacred text that claims to be comparable to the Bible. In the following content, we will explore the above content in depth and apply rigorous academic standards to evaluate them. Stay tuned. Thank you for your support. I hope you can subscribe, turn on notifications, and share to support this channel to continue and learn more. You can also go to my Patreon. Let us know God, think about faith, and live out Christ together. Goodbye.